The late afternoon sun dipped low over the riverbank, painting the water in streaks of gold and silver as Emma Clarke walked along the rugged path, her thoughts far too tangled to notice how close she had strayed to the edge. Her mind was consumed with board meetings, looming deadlines, and the constant pressure of running Clarke Enterprises, a corporation worth billions yet one that had left her life feeling painfully hollow. She had come here, away from the city, to clear her head and perhaps find a sliver of peace in nature, but the city shoes she wore betrayed her in an instant. The sharp heel slipped against wet stone, and in one terrifying heartbeat, her body tilted forward toward the rushing river below. Panic clutched her chest as her arms flailed, desperate for something to hold on to, but before the icy water could claim her, a pair of strong, calloused hands closed around her wrist and yanked her back with unyielding strength. Emma landed hard against the stranger's chest, her breath ripped from her lungs, heart hammering as though it wanted to burst free. "Easy now, I've got you," came a steady voice, low and rough from work and weariness, carrying an odd gentleness that startled her. Blinking away her shock, Emma looked up to meet the eyes of her rescuer, a man in a faded flannel shirt, jeans scuffed with years of labor, and boots caked with mud. His dark hair was tousled, his face weathered not by age but by life's burdens, yet his gaze held the steady calm of someone who knew how to carry weight. He didn't look at her with recognition, admiration, or awe, just concern, the kind of concern one might show a stranger who nearly lost her life. "Are you hurt?" he asked, scanning her quickly, and Emma shook her head, still breathless, clutching her chest as she tried to gather her composure. She muttered a shaky, "Thank you," her voice catching in her throat, but the man only nodded and stepped back as if embarrassed by her gratitude. To him, it had been nothing more than instinct, to her, it felt like the universe had intervened. Emma Clarke, the woman feared in boardrooms and revered in financial circles, had almost slipped into the river, and not a soul around her knew, but this man, this stranger with tired eyes and strong hands, had pulled her back. For reasons she couldn't explain, Emma felt as though fate had just changed the course of her life. Daniel Hayes had long ago grown accustomed to carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, though no one would ever guess it by the way he quietly went about his days. At 36, he was already weathered by hardship, his hands rough from years of construction work, his back sore from endless double shifts, yet he never complained because he knew that everything he did was for his daughter, Lily. At just 7 years old, she was his entire reason for breathing, her laughter the only melody that reminded him life still held something good despite the bills that piled high on the kitchen counter and the eviction notices that seemed to threaten every month. When Emma had nearly fallen into the river, Daniel hadn't thought twice about leaping forward to save her. It wasn't heroism, just instinct, the same instinct that made him shield Lily from every scraped knee and every cruel word from the world. What struck him afterward, though, was how she had looked at him with such raw gratitude, as if no one had ever pulled her back from the edge before, and though he didn't understand it, he found her eyes lingering in his mind long after she had walked away. Later that night, he sat at the rickety kitchen table, watching Lily draw pictures of the river and chatter about school, while he forced himself not to worry about the overdue electricity bill lying unopened nearby. He had grown used to swallowing pride, to patching shoes with tape, to skipping meals so Lily could eat, but deep down there was a part of him that longed for someone to notice the struggle he kept buried beneath his calm exterior. He would never have guessed that the woman he pulled from the riverbank was the CEO of one of the largest companies in the country. To him, she was simply a stranger in expensive clothes who had nearly slipped into danger. And yet, as he lay in bed that night, staring at the cracked ceiling, Daniel couldn't shake the strange feeling that meeting her had stirred something inside him, something long buried beneath exhaustion and survival, a flicker of connection, of curiosity, of a life beyond the walls of responsibility. For now, though, he shoved the thought away. Tomorrow would come with another shift, another bill, another worry, and Daniel Hayes had no room for distractions, especially not from a woman whose world was surely nothing like his own. Emma couldn't explain why the man from the river lingered so vividly in her thoughts, but in the days that followed, Daniel Hayes's quiet strength replayed in her mind like an unfinished melody, tugging at her in ways she didn't expect. She had been surrounded her whole life by people who wanted something from her, investors demanding returns, employees seeking promotions, friends who measured her worth by her power, but Daniel had asked for nothing, not even her name, after saving her. That raw authenticity unsettled her, and before long she found herself searching for him, curiosity guiding her back to the riverside park where children played and parents gathered after school. It was there she spotted him again, sitting on a worn bench while his daughter, a bright-eyed little girl with a messy braid and a contagious laugh, ran through the grass with a paper kite trailing behind her. Emma hesitated, nervous in a way she hadn't felt since her earliest days in business, then approached slowly, her heels sinking slightly into the soft earth. Lily noticed her first, bounding up with cheerful chatter, and Emma knelt to listen as though the child were the most important person in the world. Daniel watched warily, suspicion flickering in his eyes, but she could sense his protective instincts came not from hostility but from a life that had taught him to be cautious with strangers. Over the next week, Emma found excuses to return, always under the guise of fresh air, though in truth it was the company she sought. She brought small things, pastries Lily devoured, extra notebooks for her drawings, and once, a grocery bag she claimed she had bought too much of, but Daniel accepted each gesture stiffly, pride bristling against what felt like charity. Yet beneath his guarded exterior, Emma saw a man of integrity, a father whose love for his daughter was the foundation of every weary breath he took. And though she kept her identity hidden, she realized she had never felt more herself than in those stolen hours by the river, laughing with Lily, trading quiet words with Daniel, and shedding the heavy armor of her title. In their world, she was not Emma Clarke the CEO, she was simply Emma, a woman rediscovering what it meant to be seen without expectation. It happened on an evening when the sky blushed with the fading light of sunset, and Daniel was packing up Lily's schoolbooks at the park bench while Emma lingered nearby, her laughter still ringing softly from a game of tag she had joined with Lily. A sleek black car rolled up to the curb, polished so clean it caught the last rays of the sun like a mirror, and two men in suits stepped out, speaking into earpieces as they hurried toward Emma with the kind of deference reserved for royalty. Daniel froze, watching as one of them addressed her as Miss Clarke and opened the car door, and suddenly the puzzle pieces snapped together, the expensive shoes that had looked so out of place by the river, the way she carried herself with quiet authority, the air of someone used to command. She wasn't just Emma, the woman who had shared afternoons of laughter with his daughter, she was Emma Clarke, the CEO whose name Daniel had seen plastered across headlines, the woman who controlled an empire while he struggled just to keep the lights on at home. Embarrassment and disbelief tightened his chest, and when Emma turned to meet his eyes, he saw the flicker of worry in hers as though she feared the truth would drive a wedge between them. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked quietly, his voice rough with equal parts awe and hurt, but before she could answer, Lily tugged at his sleeve, whispering, "Daddy, she's still the same Emma." The child's innocent words cut through the moment, and Emma stepped closer, her voice steady but soft. "Because with you, I wasn't a CEO. I wasn't a headline. I was just a woman, and for once, someone looked at me without wanting anything in return. Daniel, the day you pulled me from that river, you saved more than my life, you reminded me what it feels like to be seen." For a long moment he searched her eyes, torn between the walls he had built to survive and the hope flickering in his chest, and then, slowly, he let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Maybe their worlds were far apart, but in that instant, Daniel realized that sometimes fate didn't care about titles or wealth, it cared about two lives colliding at the right moment, and choosing to hold on instead of letting go.